While Call of Duty World War II might be a little bit dry at the very moment, we started as of last week kind of a retrospective look at various different games in the franchise, and that's something we talked about a month to maybe a month and a half ago at this point in time, whenever Black Ops 1 had that anomaly of 100,000 plus players online in 2018. And as you guys seem to enjoy that one, last week we started it up as kind of a series to take a look at these, and we did World at War. And again, you guys absolutely seem to enjoy that one, so I figured why not, let's keep it going, and it'll give us a little bit of a break from World War II, if it might not be your cup of tea, and maybe just a sort of break that we can have each individual week until we end up getting back up to, well, the current title. So this week I wanted to take a look at Modern Warfare 2 in 2018. We talked a little bit about Modern Warfare 2 earlier in the week with the rumors of Modern Warfare 2 Remastered, and we'll touch on that very briefly just kind of as a recap and talking point later on in the video, but it's not going to be what this is all focused about. So if you guys like Modern Warfare 2, if you guys had fun on this title, well, if you're here to watch, then it's your lucky day because we got 2 in a week span. So hopefully you guys do enjoy, and hopefully you guys are looking forward to this kind of thing, and if you guys want to keep this up as a series, I'd be more than happy to. I think it's a cool little break away from the current title and to go back and do something just a little bit fun to talk about the classic games that you may or may not have taken part of back in their heyday. So with that said, let's just jump right into it here. Modern Warfare 2 in 2018. Well, first and foremost, one of the biggest things that stands out to me always with Modern Warfare 2, not only is just the game itself, but the weaponry. That's something that whatever your opinion on Modern Warfare 2 may be, whether you love it, you hate it, you're kind of in the middle, you're impartial, there's undoubtedly some of the most iconic weapons in the franchise that came out of that game in particular. The Barrett 50 cal, the Intervention, the Spaz 12, which as a secondary, man, you just cannot beat that. I imagine having shotguns today as a secondary. Everybody would lose their mind, but that was something that made the secondaries incredibly viable. Silenced UMP, ACR, SCAR, all those good ones, all classics. Once again, they all came out of here, and that is something that I think that as of recently, Call of Duty might be lacking in a little bit. Both in classic weapons and maps and other things, there's not too much as the recent titles, maybe it's just me, that have really stood out on the level that these weapons had. Of course, say in World War II, you have the MP40, you have the BAR, you have the FG42, you have those weapons that are meta, but I don't know if they will necessarily stand the test of time, and 10 years down the line, if Call of Duty's still a thing, people will go back and be like, man, do you remember the FG42 from Call of Duty World War II? Like they would, say, the ACR, the Intervention, the SCAR, other weapons like that. Again, I have no issue with any title really, but the weaponry from Modern Warfare 2 is in a league of its own. Same thing goes for the maps really. They're classic. The spawns maybe not so much. Maybe we can call the spawns infamous rather than classic, simply because if you go back and try and play this game as of 2018, well, you're gonna have a grand old time if you love getting spawn killed. But again, still some of the best in the series, I think. You have maps like High Rise, Favela, Scrapyard, Rust, Afghan. There's so many ones in this game that are just fantastic. And you might even have so many that stand out and stand the test of time that you could compare them to the launch of number of maps that we had with World War II. Now that I think about that, like that's the crazy part to me, is that next year it'll be a decade since this game has launched, and some of those maps are still some of the favorites within Call of Duty overall. And we've seen a number of them remastered and remade in various different locations and various different titles because they have been so good and fans want to see them more and more. But as for what it's actually like playing, if you hop into a lobby right now, whether you have the game or not, what can you expect? That's something that we'll start out with connection, because that's a big one, something that really does affect your gameplay experience, finding lobbies, all that kind of stuff. Connection, if you guys don't recall, if you guys were not a part of the prime of Modern Warfare 2, connection was based off of peer-to-peer connection. So we didn't have dedicated or central servers or anything like that. We didn't have a hybrid system like we do today, and therefore, even back whenever there were hundreds of thousands of players playing the game all at once, connection still had the chance to be very dodgy and very spotty, depending on who was the host. And host advantage was a thing. If somebody was chosen as that host, their ping would obviously be lower since everyone's connecting to them, and therefore they are the central location. So they have the better advantage there, and therefore a lot of the times you would see some crazy clips from Modern Warfare 2 back in the prime, and very much so similar to today, but a little bit worse, because peer-to-peer is generally bad compared to where we are as a gaming industry, and that's something that if you go back and play this, you'll definitely be thankful for the hybrid and dedicated systems that we have in current titles, because you will have a lot more lag, you will have a tougher time finding lobbies because there's not as many players to connect to, and unless you end up wanting to play a game on 200 millisecond, 300 millisecond ping, then you might have to hope that there's enough players you can connect to as is. But with that said, because players are stretched so thin and there might not be all that many in your region, this is something in which it causes lag, and you might not have the greatest experience in the game itself. Now, as for that, connecting to lobbies, talking about lobbies a little bit more, it's relatively similar to what we saw with connection. Once again, because people are stretched so thin, you're going to have a lesser number of lobbies you'll be able to connect to. When I was playing today and earlier in the week for the remastered video that we did, that was something in which I was probably getting the same, maybe 2, 3, 4 lobbies depending on game mode every single time. So team deathmatch, I'd end up running into the same people with the same gamer tags and everything every so often. I switch out to domination, I'd see the same people there over a couple of games. If I back out and go into a different lobby, same thing with like even Ground War. So with the lack thereof of players compared to when it was in its prime, you're going to run into these lobbies a lot easier. So I guess that really depends on, well, how good the players are, whether you're enjoying that lobby or not, and a lot of things that can boil down to personal preference and if you want to stay in that lobby or not. So you might have to pick and choose and maybe pick your battles a little bit further, because if there's, say, 3 lobbies available and you end up getting annoyed in 2 of them, well, you might get lucky on that 3rd one, or you might get placed back into one of the 2 games that you ended up not having fun in. So that's something that is just the cons of not having a very populated player base in the present day, but it is what it is. Again, if we somehow end up getting this to be seen by enough people that it revitalizes that interest in playing again, we'll maybe end up getting some more players here and there that create maybe a 5th, 6th, 7th lobby, who knows? But still, that's something that comes down to player count. Now, as for other types of lobbies, and I say this kind of loosely, modded lobbies, if you guys remember back in Modern Warfare 2, those were a big thing. A lot of people would consider Modern Warfare 2 to be the most modded Call of Duty title out of the franchise. World at War might have some mainstay up there, but it still seems like Modern Warfare 2 to this day is relatively more modded than World at War, at least in the online perspective of multiplayer. You're gonna probably run into a lobby or 2 here and there if you jump on and play for a long while. It was something in which I came into contact with it randomly, and then afterwards didn't see any for the next couple hours that I ended up playing, and it was really just a random hit or miss occurrence. And admittedly, I didn't really see it all that much across the hours that I played over the last couple of days here, gathering footage and just a general feel for the game as well for these 2 videos that I ended up making on it. So I only actually ended up seeing 2 lobbies out of that entire time that I went and played the game. I only saw 2 lobbies that were modded. One was a dedicated mod menu lobby that offered your standard mods that you'd end up getting back in the day even, and that one was actually kind of surprising to me because I'm a little bit out of touch with the modding community in this sense, because I haven't been really interested in it since Modern Warfare 2, but back in the day, KVs to host lobbies were a bit pricey, let alone now when there's even less of them out there in a smaller quantity seemingly. But that lobby really wasn't anything that was a level mod lobby though, so it might have just been infections, in which, if I'm not mistaken, those are a little bit easier to do anyway. But regardless, that was the only one that I saw was dedicated to it. The one lobby I got in, the kill cam showcased some guy bringing up a mod menu, but that was really it. And I don't really think there was much to go with that because it didn't have any aimbot. That I actually did come in contact with though a couple of times. Some people spinning around just shooting into the ground but getting headshots with everything. That still persists sometimes, but again, that's rare. I only came into contact with that out of probably about 12 hours of playtime, maybe 2 to 3 times. But as for the gameplay itself, once again, there's a lot of things that you probably remember here out of this, but it is classic Call of Duty. It is something that was that air quote prime of the franchise that a lot of people will refer to as, and if you guys have not played it in a while, well, I definitely suggest jumping on. But the one thing that I will say is that maybe jump in with a little bit more of an open mind, because I know that personally what I'm about to explain, I am definitely a victim of this. I remember fondly Modern Warfare 2 and really the only good times of the game, in which we'd end up being nuking players, 1v1s on Rust, the awful quality 360 party chat with my friends from high school, just doing our thing. All of it was very nostalgic, just in my mind thinking about all of that, popping in my Modern Warfare 2 disc into my 360. That was something that was fantastic, really got me going and got me excited to play, but whenever you end up going in, whether it's the lack of the player base in 2018 or it's just a game that we don't want to remember the flaws for, there's still a lot of things that will make you definitely irritated. And I'll be totally honest with you, man, I got really angry at some points in times, much more frustrated than not only any game in recent years has made me, but also much more frustrated than a game that is 10 years old and means absolutely nothing in the grand scheme of things should make you feel. that's something that, again, there's that many irritants that it just kind of drove me to that point. Such things including the god-awful spawns, noob tubes in RPGs, awful peer-to-peer connection at times, painkiller, and actually, I might have a clip of me putting 3 Spaz 12 shots into a guy only to be turned on and insta-melted. Commando lunging, all sorts of stuff, the list can go on and on. So there's a lot of stuff that if you guys don't like all that kind of stuff, you might rage a lot at this point. But again, it's classic COD, it is what it is, and it's part of the history of the franchise. That's where we came from. So maybe it's something that you can deal with, maybe it's something that you don't want to deal with, and therefore maybe it makes you think twice about popping in your disc. But regardless, we're coming up on that 10-year mark, which is kind of crazy to me because, again, I remember playing this back in the prime, back with my friends, having a good time, and it's crazy to think that it's been almost 10 years at this point. So maybe 2019 we end up getting a remaster. Like I said in that video talking about Modern Warfare 2 Remaster, there's a lot of different factors that go into it. Ultimately, if I were to say it was going to happen, I think it would come down to simply being a decade-old sort of revitalization of it, just kind of as fan service. But again, Modern Warfare Remastered, if rumors hold true, then it's actually a much more deeply rooted thing than just trying to give a remaster to be fan service, as to why we got it with Infinity Ward's last title of Infinite Warfare. So maybe we end up getting it in 2019, but the one thing is that I just hope that if it does happen, it doesn't fall short like Modern Warfare Remastered for the reasons that we just mentioned earlier, because there's really not all that much to keep players engaged, and we also saw that happen with Modern Warfare Remastered. You had one DLC pack, that being the Variety Map Pack, and you also had DLC weapons, which some people liked because, well, it kept the game fresh and a little bit different than that of what they played almost 10 years ago at that point. But again, also some people were like, wow, you're tampering with a classic title, how could you? So it was one of those things that you just couldn't win with it. So I'm hoping that if it does happen, it doesn't go the same route, something's changed around, because even when you add new stuff, the only downside is that it's still a game that we've played for years, repackaged and sold again. So brutally honest, if you give me a Modern Warfare 4 or a Modern Warfare prequel and let Infinity Ward jump back into the greatness that they had with the series, I think that you don't need to rely on a remaster, and I think that it works out tremendously as is. But still, once again, approaching that 10-year mark, kind of crazy. And that said, definitely give it a shot if you guys have not played in a while. If you still have your disc, maybe dust off your 360 or PlayStation 3. Definitely worth at least a little bit of time on it if you have something to kill and you want to try something out to go back in time a little bit and maybe relive some nostalgia, or just break away from the current set of titles that you have at your disposal. But that said, that's where we're gonna wrap it up. I want to give you guys once again a little retrospective look of Modern Warfare 2 in 2018. Still is a great game, still has its flaws of course though, but again, how you interpret it and how much you enjoy it comes down to you. So that said, jump on, let me know your thoughts. Of course, let me know your thoughts down there in the comment section down below. Regardless, do you guys love Modern Warfare 2? Do you like it? Do you not necessarily care for it? Is there anything in particular you were kind of annoyed by? Whatever it may be, let me know down there in the comment section down below. But hopefully you guys enjoyed, and if you guys did, make sure you drop a like down below, and of course if you guys are new to the channel, make sure you guys subscribe so you don't miss a single thing regarding retrospective looks like this at different games. Modern Warfare 2 this week, World at War last week, if you guys can guess it. Black Ops, maybe next week. And as well, if you guys want to stay up to date with anything regarding Call of Duty World War II, best class setups, tips, tricks, news, information, all that good stuff, we got you covered here up on the channel. If you guys want to follow me over on Twitter, that's the best place to get connected with me outside of YouTube. Practically live on Twitter, so if you guys want to strike up a conversation, ask me a question, whatever it may be, link is down there in the description below. As well, if you guys want to follow me over on Instagram, trying to get a little bit more active over there as well, so that link is also in the description. But all that said and out of the way, I hope you guys have a fantastic day. Once again, hop on Modern Warfare 2 if you guys have a few seconds to kill. I think you guys will enjoy it. But thanks so much for watching. Mine has been Espresso. I'll see you guys later. Take care and peace.